Starting a business is hard, and growing one is much harder. And my guest today knows all about this. The amazing Miranda Lievers is the co-founder and COO of Thinkific. She has helped 50,000 business owners grow their businesses with online courses while educating tens of millions of students around the globe. Welcome, Miranda.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Laura.
Oh, you are doing amazing things. And, I've loved the conversations. I'm thrilled to call you a friend. And I really admire everything that you are creating with Thinkific. And I'd love to, you've come a long way. The business has grown and shifted. You went public last year. So Thinkific has grown in leaps and bounds. But I'd actually like to go back and ask you, how did you get here? I know you used to have a photography business, and now you're the co-founder of a tech business with hundreds of employees. Tell us a bit about that journey.
Yeah, it's always interesting because it's like, okay, let me think about how I can do this succinctly because
Yeah.
it's like it all started when. But I think when I look at my history, two things are true. Number one, early exposure to tech and technology, and I'll talk about that for a little bit, and then small business. And so my dad did a comp sci degree starting in the late 80s, and that meant that I was on the internet before most people had any idea what the internet was. I had that in my home from a very, very early age. And so in high school, the way that I would make money was doing in-home computer repair or building websites for people before CSS existed for anybody that understands
Oh
technology.
my
So
gosh, I
really
love that.
days. And I was the one that introduced all of my friends to IRC, like internet chat, way, way, way back in the day. And so that early exposure to tech certainly played a part. And then the other side was really small business. And so whether that was my 8-year-old self with a craft stand at the end of my dirt road, and nobody was driving down my dirt road, but if they did, I was there and ready to hustle, all the way up to like I said, is doing, web design or computer repair or setting up people's networks, whatever it was, as a teen to make money. I was always around small business, and I feel like I came from, I've got, farmers on one side of my family and beekeepers on the other, all of which is really just small business. And so I really understood both what it meant to create and build your own path and your own thing and be reliant entirely on yourself as a small business owner. And I understood technology and the ability for entrepreneurs, especially, to leverage technology to expand what they were able to do with their own two hands. And really, when you understand those two parts of my background, it doesn't take too much of a stretch to understand how I came to be in the position that I am, serving entrepreneurs around the world, build and grow businesses by leveraging what they're passionate about.
I love that. Isn't it? It's so much easier to connect the dots looking backwards. I remember hearing that line. It's like, oh yeah, you can go back and go, of course, this is how I got here. But sometimes it doesn't always make sense because life and business isn't a linear path in any way, shape, or form.
That is very, very true.
So obviously, you've grown Thinkific. You're serving thousands of entrepreneurs. What have been some of the, highlights and maybe lowlights of that journey? I think a lot of times people might go, oh my gosh, Miranda, you're amazing. Your business is doing such amazing things, but growing that business, as I said in the beginning, it's hard. And it comes with all of these challenges. The bigger the business, sometimes the bigger the challenges. So are there some things you can share, like maybe the big wins and big highlights, and then some of those things that that you're willing to share that didn't turn out the way you wanted?
Yeah, I think that the reality is that, as you said, business is hard, and if it were easy, everybody would be doing it, and if it were, it would be a very, very different story. And so our journey at Thinkific, and I'm one of a few co-founders, so there's 4 of us, and in many ways we went heads down, years ago, building what we then imagined could be. And for many years of that journey, and sometimes still today, is like you're really just sort of like in your own world, looking down at your feet, just trying to put one foot in front of the other, and uh, building what you believe should exist and can exist and will serve the people around you. But it's a whole different thing to sort of step back and look at how far you come. And I think that that's true whether you're climbing an actual mountain, as I know you've had recent experience with,
Yeah.
step back and be like, okay, but whoa, like look at how far we made it from from ground level all the way up, or building a business. And so it that is a little bit of like the zoomed out view. Certainly really exciting successes along the way. I'm gonna start like one of the first ones. Like I remember the very first time that a customer signed up, got going, and had made money, and none of us knew who they were. Because
Right.
early on, even as a tech company, like at first we really were like, it's like we had technology, but we would have to onboard people and help them get set up and like really handhold along the way. And there was a lot of things that like features just didn't even exist for them to be able to do that on their own. And so early on, all of our customers were really like, we really partnered with them, but also like knew them, and we were helping them like crop images to fit their site, or like actually
Oh,
like
yes.
they would pay, we would have to like click on every feature. Like we would have like we were the manual, like we were the automated way to like get them their features when they
Right.
upgrade, so on and so forth. But I remember the very first time that somebody was able to sign up for Thinkific, get going on their own, and made money. And I like basically I pulled a report one day, and it's like, oh my gosh, like who is this? Like does anybody else here know who this is? Like somebody has actually made money on our software, and we didn't have to help them. And so that was a really big moment, that I remember, where you kind of get like that, like a little bit of that, like, oh, like maybe this really can work. Like maybe this really can deliver the change and the impact that we believe that it can. And fast forward, and we have built and grown an incredible team. Uh, have seen lots and lots of growth sort of year over year. And that was true pre-pandemic, but certainly when the pandemic forced everybody to
Yeah.
go inside and onto their computers, being in the position to help, and help in particular folks with offline business models take those businesses online, was a tremendous opportunity for us, and frankly a way to serve. And so that proved to be a huge accelerant to our business. And so we started the pandemic as a team of 115. A year later, we were about 230. A year after that, just under 500 at the beginning of this year. Within that roller coaster, we had the opportunity to go public. We went public on the Toronto Stock Exchange in April of 2021. So that was certainly a huge thing, a lot of excitement. And
Yeah.
what's interesting about that, though, is lots of folks are like, "Oh my gosh, like what is it like now that you've made it?" I'm like, "I don't know what that means," because like the next day you just have to, like go heads down and just get back to work. And like it's like, but I love that. And then along the way, there certainly are the days that things don't go according to plan. I think that the reality of being a business owner and entrepreneur is that you're figuring out a lot of things as you go, and so you're often in the position because you're good at figuring things out and recognizing that pretty much everything is figure outable, but it doesn't change the fact that we have missteps and such along the way. One of the big ones for us as a company is we got a little bit ahead of our skis earlier this year. Like we now know many tech companies have, but we were one of the first to make the decision to lay off some of our team, and we did that in March of this year. I will say that that was the hardest thing that I've ever had to do as an
And I
entrepreneur.
remember when you were going through that and how hard that was,
Yeah,
because it's the people in it, right? It's the emotion. It's, yes, you're a
yeah,
tech company, but what I've seen is you care so deeply for your team and the people that you serve.
yeah, yeah. I feel like that feels like an understatement. But yeah, so that and the reality is that we as leaders, get to talk about and revel in when things are going according to plan and when everything is, growth charts are up and to the right. But it also means that we need to own up and recognize when we make mistakes. And so regardless of the economic climate, regardless of the fact that other companies are finding themselves in a similar position now, sort of like on a daily basis, it feels like it doesn't change the fact that was a failing of ours as leaders to end up in that position. But at the same time, we were very early. That meant that we were saying goodbye to our alumni at a time that the tech community was quick to rally to accept them and scoop them up. And I know they generally really landed on their feet. And now that's in our rearview mirror as we continue to build and grow into the years ahead.
Yeah, I think we all learn from our mistakes. And when you're a public company, though, those mistakes are much more public than, they are if you're a small business that you don't have to, show up and have that public face, with stakeholders and a variety of people. So you've got multiple different groups that you have to now be thinking about in that process. So, I titled this about, writing your own playbook, and that's something you've talked about. And I'd love to hear, what does that mean to you, and how have you written your own playbook, and what tips or guidance would you have for other entrepreneurs wanting to do the same? I feel like that was 3 questions wrapped up into one, but we could tackle those one at a time.
Yeah. So I think that what's interesting is from the time that we're kids, we are taught how to play by the rules. We are taught to solve the equation this way, structure your argument using this particular format, fill in the line, write the answer on the line, stand in this line, and on and on and on. We're really taught to follow the rules, follow, what we've been told to do. And the reality is that if you are truly going out and building and growing your own business, which is different than building your own job, oftentimes we get trapped in this in between of, are we building a job or are we building a business? And so building a job, we understand, I think, which is really, it's like if you're doing work within a company, you can go out and you can start freelancing and you can fill up your calendar and do the work where folks are coming to you directly. And that sort of makes sense. But when you think about what is the difference between a job versus a business, is you think about how do you take on more of that work? How do you grow bigger and faster than, just the individual you, and at a rate that scales greater than just the sum of your team members? So, if you can take whatever it is, let's say 100K versus, worth of, freelancing in a year, if you add 5 other team members and you're just 5x, that is you still haven't really leveraged what it means to build a business. And a business is that idea that because of the structures of that business and the ability to do more as you layer on, it's a little bit different. And so when I talk to entrepreneurs, and I talk to folks, of course, all of the time, I often hear places that they're getting stuck, where they've built the playbook and now they're spending time running the playbook as opposed to the next playbook. And to give a little bit more context to that is we think about the playbooks in our business as sort of like the set of processes and like the how-tos of how we do this, which is we can all identify what those are. So it's okay, I've got my playbook where I get customers in this way. They come in and we onboard them using this system. My system will send out all the appropriate, emails. They fill out the things, they do their call, then we deliver this piece of work. That's a playbook. And so once we've got that set up, that's a really good framework for a job. And so that can be your job if you wanted to build yourself a job. But if you're wanting to build yourself a business, then that probably should be somebody else's job once the playbook is written. And you need to get to building the next playbook. And sometimes you're rebuilding the playbook around part of that, which is like, well, now how do we leverage what we know to get more and more customers that are coming in, at an exponentially greater rate? Or how do we think differently about what it is that we're offering so that we can start to create more opportunities for our business to grow? And it's that work of figuring out what doesn't yet exist that is the magic, but also the really hard part of being an entrepreneur. And it is so easy to spend our time looking for and falling back into the trap of either running the playbooks we've written or looking for playbooks that other people have written and just, trying to effectively find the answers outside of our business, when the real opportunity for growth is leaning into that discomfort, figuring out what is new, special, unique, how do you create those differentiators because you are doing things differently than every other playbook out there, and investing our time as entrepreneurs into building the next playbooks for our business.
Oh, I love that. And when I work with my clients on their brand, that's a big part of it, is really like, what is your differentiator? And sometimes it's how they are packaging it up. It's what's unique about what they're offering and how they're offering it. And a lot of people don't know, and they don't know how to leverage these different things that they come to the table with and turn that into something that becomes their unique methodology, their process, their IP, whatever that is, whatever you want to call it. And so what I've seen is that those things that are naturally easy to us are usually the things that make us the most unique and different. But because they come easy, most people can't see it. They're like, well, that's not special. That's not, like, the number of times I hear people say, well, like, that's just something I do. And they kind of fluff it off. I'm like, no, that's what makes you really unique and special. And they're like, really? So it's always fascinating because we can't see for ourselves what we're amazing at. And that can be the hardest part of the journey, is if you don't have somebody to see what you don't see in yourself, you'll end up probably following more than leading and creating your own playbook.
100%. I think that one of the tricks that I have latched onto, that I try to highlight to others especially, is to look for the places where you have expertise or something, so like unique understanding in like a couple of different areas, and figure out where they intersect and how to mash them together. And so, if we're thinking about, the body of worldly knowledge, it is hard to think about, like, if you're just sort of living in one domain, like if you're just sort of living in, I know marketing and I'm really good at marketing, it can be really hard to actually figure out, like, how do I have something new to say? How do I wade into this world when there's so much out there about marketing? But for many of us, we actually know, quite a bit about other things as well. Career paths are like never linear, even when we think they are. When you go back, you realize it's like, oh no, actually, I also along the way learned an awful lot about this, or I had these really interesting experiences that gave me a different perspective. And when you combine those two worlds, and you start to look at what is unique about the intersection of two different places, not only is it easier, I find, to actually identify what you uniquely can do and can bring, but there's not as many people there, so it's easy. You're away from the crowd a little bit, in a way that allows you, maybe to feel that there's space. When looking at only a single domain, it can be hard to feel like there's space.
I love that. Looking back and finding those intersections to see what fits. So I was just, before we got on this, I was telling you I was just in Morocco, and one of the days we were out in the desert, and we went on a vision quest. So everyone kind of had to go off in a different direction, and it felt like such a metaphor as I'm literally forging my foot. There's nothing except my own footprints behind me and nothing in front of me, and I had to choose the path. and go away from everybody else. The goal was to not be able to see anybody else in our group, but not obviously get lost in the desert too far. And it felt like such a metaphor. Like, I am literally forging my own path through the desert. And it was such a beautiful reminder that is where I want to be, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs do, is you don't want to be following somebody else's footsteps or path that they've created. You want to create your own.
100%.
Yeah. And it's also not always the easiest journey, as you and I both know.
It's not the easiest journey. And I think that one of the things that is also true is that it feels, and it can feel, really uncomfortable. Our brains are designed to keep us safe, and sometimes they misinterpret, being in the desert with only your footsteps behind you as a place that is not safe, because it is uncertain. And sometimes our brains, go into overdrive with the job of keeping us safe and, bring in that fight or flight feeling, which can show up. Sometimes we articulate it as imposter syndrome. Other times we just articulate it as like, what the heck am I doing out here syndrome. Our brains are designed to keep us safe. And what that means is that often we feel anxious when we're out there, literally or figuratively, in the desert, carving our own path. And the immediate reaction can be to retreat to safety, or to retreat to somewhere that is comfortable and known, to retreat to a playbook that somebody else has handed us that said, that has said, like, oh, if you just follow these steps, then you'll get where you're trying to go. But the reality is that the greatest leaps and opportunities come from staying in that place where we are on the edge of our own understanding, and continuing to move into a future that we're, like I said before, like, only imagining could be. But that's where the magic is.
Yeah, and it's that getting uncomfortable. And I've just moved with my family to Italy. Talk about getting out of your comfort zone. We were very comfortable. We're like, we have a great house, great neighborhood, like everything was kind of great, but also a little too comfortable. And the discomfort of this move and the unknown and this forging a new path and dealing with education and work and all of those things, it's kind of that uncharted territory. It's like we literally are writing our own playbook as we're going. And I think that's often the challenge, is when you're writing the playbook, people are following you thinking that you know what the heck you're doing sometimes. And you're like, I'm still figuring this out. And I think that's also the reality.
Yeah. And I don't know that goes away. So the reality is that as your business gets bigger and objectively more successful, your pool of peers becomes smaller. And, I don't know, at least I haven't figured it out yet. Like I don't know that necessarily goes away, but I think that you can become more comfortable living in that discomfort. And the recognition, one of my mantras, especially this last year, has been that nothing is ever as bad or as good as you think it is. And it's like, okay, like we can get through the hard things. And when good things happen like that, like, it's important to stop and celebrate, but also that's not the end. And so continuing to move forward. I love the fact that you've moved, of course, to Italy with your family. And what an incredible gift to give your children, to help them start their life journey really leaning into this idea that everything is figure outable. And what a gift for them to have at this stage for them.
Thanks. And some days it's a day by day figuring it out. But I'll tell you, they're learning how to navigate, subway systems in foreign countries and airports, and carry luggage and resilience and walk kilometers, and, learning about culture. And I'm like, at the end of the day, that's also, I think, just as important as, the learning that they would do in a classroom. It's finding that balance, right, between the expectations of society and wanting to create your own and forge your own path. Not for the faint of heart, this journey, is it?
Not at all. Well, I'm excited to continue to hear how things go as you settle into your home.
Absolutely. So this has been so insightful. I always love chatting with you, Miranda. I feel like you have such amazing, valuable things to offer people. I know one of the things that you love doing is, sharing. You're starting to speak, and, you talk about mentoring other women. What are the ways that people can continue to connect with you and follow you and the journey that you're on?
Thank you for asking. I'm still figuring out, it's like, where do I want to go and speak and write? And I don't know what that looks like. But Instagram is probably the best place, / Miranda Lievers on Instagram. And then mirandalievers.com has my email address and contact information if, for folks that are looking for that. But those are my best contacts.
Amazing. And if people want to learn more about Thinkific and learn if that's the right platform, that's an easy one to find.
Easy.
Yeah. And it's a wonderful platform, and it is helping so many people. I've definitely seen in the clients I've worked with the shift to virtual, right? So many whole industries have gone online and need a platform like what you have created. So thank you for what you've created and the support that you give so many entrepreneurs.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I think that what is cool about this time is the pandemic really brought the future forward. And the reality is that any business can use education as a tool for growth. In the past, many did, and in the future, many more will. And so rather than just thinking about, do I have or do I want an online course business? It's not that at all. It's really about how do you use and can you use education and online communities in order to augment what you're already doing for your audience. And that we've seen incredible success across almost every industry, from mining to yoga instructors and everything in between. And certainly there to support. So yeah, thinkific.com.
Amazing. I think that's the perfect way to wrap this up. Thank you again, Miranda. Thank you for joining us. If you're watching the replay, if you have questions for Miranda, pop it into the chat wherever you have streamed this, and we will see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.